Hello everyone, Unforgiven here with another GIMP tutorial. Today we will be demonstrating how to create an animated AVI using GIMP with the GAP plugin. That is the GIMP animated plugin, and I will place a link in the description below that is available from DeviantArt. It is available in multiple places. I am linking this individual one. It is the most recent version of GAP. Is GAP 2.6. I realize this does say for GIMP 2.6, but it is compatible with 2.8 GIMP. And it also comes with just a slew of extra filters and plugins. Uh, Once you do click on that link, if you do not already have GAP, it brings you to this site here. You can download simply by clicking on the download button in the upper right hand corner. And this is a zip file. Once you extract the files within there, you will have a bunch of folders, one for GAP and the rest are all extras. The GAP folder itself, by opening it up, is just a executable file. It is a Windows installer, so you just by double clicking on it, it will install the GIMP animated plugin automatically onto your PC for you. All the extra folders in the zip download are extra scripts and plugins. If you need instructions on how to install them into GIMP, I will leave links in the description below to tutorials on how to do that as well. Try saying that 3 times fast. Once you have the GAP downloaded and installed onto your PC, simply open up the GIMP program. And for today's tutorial, like I said, we are going to animate an object. And this is just one of many methods to animate within GIMP. And I am going to first I'm going to choose an image that I want to animate. And I've got a nice picture of Wilbur here. That is the GIMP mascot. And if you didn't know that, that is who that is. And he is a GIF file, so it's a little easier for me to work with because I just have his head and no background image. However, if you do need to extract an image from the background and you need instructions on how to do that, I will leave a link to a tutorial for that in the description as well. For the sake of this tutorial though, I am going to just go ahead and I'm going to take my selection that I want to animate, or my image that I want to animate, and I have copied it to my clipboard, and I've done that just simply by selecting it. Since it is a GIF file and there is a transparent background, I was able to right click on my layer, alpha to selection, which tells this to select everything within the layer that is not transparent. And then under edit up top, I just copied visible. Okay, now to start on our animation, we are going to go to File and New to create a new image. Now when we are creating a new animation, it's going to be exported as a .avi file. The only thing we have to take care in here when creating the image itself is the width and the height. Both of these need to be multiples of 2, so basically just even numbers. So for the sake of the tutorial today, I am just going to change those to the default sizes of 640 by 400 with a white background. So here we go. We just have a simple white single layered background to start out with. And I have the image I wish to animate currently copied to my clipboard. So I am going to want to input or put that image in here so I can actually work on it. And to do that, I am going to come up top to Edit and Paste As. And I am going to want to paste Wilbur as a new layer. And I want to paste him as a new layer because at the end of this, we're no longer going to need this clip of Wilbur that I just put in here, but we will need the background, the white background. So I have them on separate layers for that reason. Now if you'll notice there is a little dotted box going around Wilbur here that is showing the area of the layer that he is currently on. And normally I want to position him within the box here where I want him to be for my animation. And rather than just grabbing my move tool, which is what I just did, and trying to center him up and guess on where, what looks best, an alternate to that to get him exactly in a exact position within the background layer here is to come up into your toolbox and select your Align tool. And ensuring that you are highlighted or selected onto the layer you're wishing to align. In this case it is Wilbur's head. I am going to click on Wilbur to select him as the object I'm going to be moving. And in my tool options, if you're not seeing the tool options, you can bring that up by going under Windows, Dockable Dialogues, Tool Options. And inside my tool options for my Align tool, I am going to change the alignment relative to the image. This is telling it to any changes I make to this layer, it's going to make them relative to the image. And right underneath that box is I got some nifty alignment buttons here, and I'm just going to use the basically the left and right justify and up down justification button there to align him dead center. Okay, now I've got him pretty much where I want him for my animation. So I am now going to want to change the size of the layer that Wilbur is on to fit the canvas that we're working with. To do that, I am going to come over into the Layers dialog box. I am going to right click on the layer that Wilbur's head is in, the clipboard layer. And I am going to choose Layer to Image Size. And that just simply changes the size of that individual layer to match that of the entire image. Okay, now that we have done that, we can begin our animation. Well, one method of animation, I guess you could say, within GIMP. And we're going to do this by making sure, once again, our clipboard or Wilbur head here is selected in the Layers box. Coming up top here to Filters, Distorts, Eye Warp, and this will give us our Eye Warp dialog, dockable dialog box here. And the preview it gives you to work on here can sometimes be a little small, especially if you're working on a large image. You can change this by going to any corner of the Eye Warp box. You'll get the little angled arrows, and holding down your left mouse button and dragging will increase the size of that window. So now we have a little bigger window here that we can work with. Okay, now for the Eye Warp, to begin with, we are on our Settings tab, and under the Settings we have a Deform Mode. And Deform Mode gives us 6 different options to choose from. And they're pretty much self-explanatory on what they do. Today I'm going to be using Shrink. And you can kind of just play around with these until you find something you like. You can even mix and match as you go through an individual Eye Warp session or filter rendering, I guess, to get something that you really like. But just for the sake of this tutorial and to try to shorten the time frame here, I'm going to choose Shrink. And for the Deform Radius, that is the size of the brush, in a sense, that you're going to be using. So I am going to increase that all the way up to 250. And for the Deform Amount, how much it will deform, or how much it will change how much it will shrink in this case. Every time I click on the image, I'm going to increase that all the way up to 1. And I'm going to come over onto the image, and I'm just going to play around I'm going to start clicking here in a moment and play around with this image, and I just want to make this whole thing kind of disappear in my own way, and that's the animation I'm trying to accomplish here, is going from nothing to a nice picture of Wilbur here in reverse. But to start out by taking a nice picture of Wilbur and going from there to nothing. So by clicking on Wilbur here a couple times, and notice I start to shrink him. And by staying close to the center as I'm clicking, he basically just, it's like he just gets sucked up into a really tiny hole or something there. Okay, now that I have him completely gone, that's basically how I wanted to start the video, or how I want this to start. I am going to come over to the other tab within the iWarp, the Animate, and in here I'm going to ensure that there is a check in the box next to Animate telling iWarp that I want to create animation from this filter. And since I started with Wilbur's head and went to nothing, and I want my video to be the other way around, to start from nothing and actually have his head come out like it's being pushed through a hole, I guess, instead of being pulled down, I'm going to check the box next to reverse, and that will just reverse the order of the layers. And click OK. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we click OK, one thing I did forget is the number of frames. Now, the larger the number of frames, the smoother your video, and the smaller, of course, the more choppy the video will be. This will let you go all the way up and create 100 frames every time you run the iWarp filter. But just for the sake of today's tutorial and for time, I am going to put it at about 50 frames. So now that I have that set correctly, I am going to click the OK button. And we'll give that a moment, and you'll notice it's creating our frames over here in the layers dialog box. And we'll just give that a moment to run. I believe I set it at 50 frames. And it does run a tad slow while recording. So this function is actually rather quick, especially in comparison to most of your visual effects programs. Now, every time I run anything in iWarp and I tell it to render animated layers, anything over usually about 40 or 50 frames, I tend to get this little pop-up message at the end. It's no big deal. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just telling you there's some leftover stuff that you don't need, and it'll get rid of it for you. So just click the OK button. Now that we have got that, if you go over into your layers box here, you will notice, I'm just going to grab and scroll down, you will notice all of the frames we have now created. And if you'll scroll all the way down to the very bottom of all of the layers, you'll find the original background, and right above that we have the original Wilbur head. We no longer need this original Wilbur head, so we are going to highlight on that frame, or that layer, and underneath I'm going to come down here to the little trash can icon and click it once to delete that layer. Now my background is on bottom, starting with frame 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth above. Now to test this animation, you can come up top to Filters, Animation, Playback. This will open up in a new window. Now at the bottom of this window, you do have the option of changing the frame rate. It is by default always set to 10 frames per second. I suggest changing this up to at least 25 or 30 at the minimum, and click play. And this just gives you a short little preview of what your animation will look like. And of course, increasing the frame rate will increase the speed of the video. while decreasing the frame rate will decrease the speed of the video. So, now by playing around in here though, I can tell that I like the 50 frames per second, how fast his head is coming out. I would just like it at the very end there when his face is full and complete for it to stay full and complete for a moment before the video ends or before it loops back. So I'm going to exit out of the playback window here, and coming back over into our windows, or our layers dialog box, I'm going to scroll all the way to the top layer, and if you come over to the little eyeball here and hold down the shift key on your keyboard and click one time, it will hide all layers except for the one you are currently on. And I'm doing this to see and just to make sure I'm on the right layer. And look back over here, I notice I have a picture of Wilbur that is full and complete. It is not one of my warped images like any of these. It is a full and complete one. So since I now know I am on that one, excuse me, and it is the very top frame, I am simply going to duplicate this frame over and over again. Since I'm going to run this at 50 frames per second, if I were to create 50 more frames, 50 copies of frame 49, it would give me 1 additional second of Wilbur's face on the video at the end before the video ended or before it loops back. So I'm not going to do that many today for the sake of tutorial and time, but I'm just going to hit the duplicate button here multiple times. Okay, and to see what that one looks like, we can come back up to Filters, Animation, and Playback once again. Excuse me. And set the frame rate to 50 and hit play. And you'll notice his face stands at the end for a moment before it loops back. And that looks good to me. Okay, I want to close that out. Now that I have this animation looking how I want it to look, the next thing I want to do is I want to convert this into an AVI. And to do so, I want to come up top to Video, Split Image to Frames. You click that, it will give you this little dialog box for split image into frames. There's no need to change any of the settings on here, just simply click OK. This will run for a moment, and after it finishes running, another window will pop up here, which it just did. Once this window pops up, there is no need for this window, so you can just close it out and close without saving. Okay, and just to show you, take for a moment here, what exactly we did there. This is where the frames actually were created when we split the image into frames on my PC, and you can see all the different frames. So even though it opened up another window, we didn't need it. We just wanted it to create these frames here. There's no need to navigate to that spot on your PC or anything. I was just showing you that for an example. Okay, now that we have split the image into frames, simply come back up top to Video once again, Master Video Encoder. Give that one a moment. It runs a little freaky when I am recording video for some strange reason. Okay, and this is the box that will open up for the Master Video Encoder. And if you'll notice, the width and the height are 640 by 400. So we are multiples of 2 there. We're good. And the frame rate, however, is defaulted always at 1. So we want to change that. And we'll put a value of 50, meaning 50 frames per second. Down below, you have Output. This output is showing you the name of the file, what it will name your AVI, as well as the destination of where it is saving it. And this can be changed simply by clicking on the button on the far right to the output video, the three dots. Click there and browse to where you wish to save, rename, and hit OK. And once you choose your location, just simply come back and click OK within the master video encoder here. I'm going to leave it on the default location and just hit OK. Give that just a moment to render the frames. The more frames you create, obviously the longer it will take. There it is done. Okay, now once it does finish, it just says, if you notice at the bottom here, it tells you that it did all my frames. I had 89 frames and it was able to encode 89 of them. I'm just going to hit OK, let that go away. Now I am basically finished. Simply navigate on your PC to where you told it to save your AVI. In this case, like I said, I left it at default, so it named it frame.avi, and I am just going to open that up and play it. And if you'll notice, we now have a nice little image, or excuse me, a little AVI animation that we created in GIMP. I didn't close that out. Alright, now before I do finish this tutorial for the last thing, on your computer, this is generally the location, whatever profile you're logged onto on your computer. If you're using Windows platform, is generally where where GIMP stores the images that it converts into frames. So once you have completed creating your AVI, you're going to want to come in and delete all of the frames that it created. Otherwise, it's just taking up extra room on your PC. And that completes our tutorial on how to create an animation, or how to create one way to create an animation within GIMP and how to export it into AVI format. I hope this tutorial was informative. Please take a second to hit the like and subscribe button and tune in next week for another video.